Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to the monthly Leader College conference call. Not everyone has joined us yet, but those who are on get to go over the technology involved with using the GoToWebinar. So in particular, I'm just going to go over some of the features that allow us to make our conversation and presentations more interactive. And I should probably introduce myself. I'm Sarah Hollister, Associate Director of Programs at Achieving the Dream. Basically, each one of you should see a control panel on your screen right now, much as the one on the screen here on the slide. If you do not see this, it's probably been minimized, and you just need to grab it out with the Grab tab, which hides and shows the control panel. A few things to note on this control panel. There is an attendee list, so you can see who's participating on the call. One of the qualities that the GoToWebinar allows us to do is to ask questions in several formats. There's a question pane where you can enter your questions, and then I will be able to ask the presenters those questions for you. Or you can raise your hand to ask a question. If you'd like, you could just try raising your hand now so we can see that everyone understands how to do that. Everyone wants to see where they can raise their hand. I see one person raising their hand. Oh, there we go. Great. Everyone knows how to raise their hand. Thanks for that. And then another feature that you have is the chat. You can go ahead and chat, chat to me if you have any questions as well. And then finally, I just want to point out that if you're having audio trouble, a lot of the times this can be because you haven't put the audio code in. So you might want to try hanging up and calling back in and being sure to put that audio pin in. In a worst case scenario, other than hanging up, you can try and shut down your computer and restart it and see if that works. So hopefully no one will have major audio or technology issues. And I think with that, we're ready to proceed with the whole presentation. Carol?
Thank you, Sarah. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on what time zone you're in. It's really nice to be with you again on this Leader College webinar conference call. We do this every month, as you know, and I'm really excited that next month we may actually have some additional Leader Colleges participating with us, because we're very close to being able to announce who was successful in getting through the Leader College competition this year. So some of your colleagues are going to be joining next month, so stay tuned for that. Let me just share with you who is on the call today from our staff side. I'm here, of course, in Sarah Hollister's voice. You've heard once already, our Associate Director of Programs. She's running the technology, and she's helping to facilitate the conversation. So thank you, Sarah, for doing that.
I'll just go over the agenda. We'll start with our Leading by Example, where we highlight some of the great work that our Leader Colleges are doing. Just a few minutes for Achieving the Dream Business. And then we'll dive into our presentation, the evolving role of placement exams for students starting college. And we're fortunate to have Gretchen Schmidt from Jobs for the Future and Pamela Bergman from TV Strategy to join us for this Leading by Example. Carol?
Okay. So those of you who've been on the call before are aware that we usually find a couple of examples of something that Leader Colleges have done in the last period since we talked, where we really feel that they exhibited the characteristic of wanting to be a leader college that shares what they know how to do with others who are anxious to learn effective practice and strategies. So this time we are sending our congratulations out to the 7 leader colleges in the state of Texas who are now participating in something we're calling the Texas Peer Coaching Initiative. You see the colleges on your screen: Alamo, Brazosport, El Paso, Houston, Lee, Jacinto, and South Texas all have become now involved in an effort where they are going to be reaching out to each of them, at least to 2 other colleges in Texas, to invite them to their campuses, to understand better some of the successful strategies and processes they've used, and then trying to work with those colleges, their peer colleges, if you will, on how the colleges might implement similar practices on their own campus. So they're going to have a year work together, and we're so excited about this for many reasons. One is that TG Public Benefit Grant Program is a new investor in Achieving the Dream, and they are really very, very interested in how this project goes. It's one of the first investments they've made like this, so a lot of ears and eyes from that investor are going to be on the success we have with this effort. And the other reason why we're really excited about this is going to be one of our early attempts at trying to better understand how can we develop this idea of peer coaching. What are some of the best ways of sharing what we've learned how to do with other colleges that want to adopt similar practices? So we're looking at the end of a year's work on this, with coming out with some lessons about the do's and the don'ts and the strengths of this approach to helping effective practice spread more quickly to this time inside the state of Texas. But our next evolution of this, we hope, will be more national in scope. So stay tuned for lessons on that. The next leading by example that we want to call out is that we had a very large number of Achieving the Dream institutions that were included in the second round of Trade Adjustments Assistance Community College and Career Training Grants, also known as TAC grants. There's many on your screen right now that are those that are in the consortia or have individual grants of their own, but there's also 29 other colleges that are part of other consortia that got funded. So we've got a tremendous, tremendous center of gravity now into the DREAM network of institutions who have trade adjustments and are going to be learning more and more about how you work on the career and workforce side of the equation with trying to get more students into situations where they're better prepared for long-term careers. So we're going to be looking to that group to learn a lot this year. But hats off to all of you for being successful in that recent competition. We wanted to alert you that we are going to be releasing a new RFP. It'll be a national RFP that is it's set up to recruit new colleges to come on board for the 2013 cohort in Achieving the Dream. Now, many of you probably have other institutions in your states that have asked you previously, how do they get into Achieving the Dream? If that is the case, we'd really love it if you could alert them to the fact that in about 2 weeks' time or so, there is going to be the release of this RFP. They can look to contacting Mia Ramos at our office to get more information. They can also go on the Achieving the Dream website. We're happy to send the RFP directly to anybody that is interested in seeing it. But we really, with your help in spreading the word, if you know of others who have from time to time expressed interest in trying to become part of the network. We also wanted to alert you to the fact that At the DREAM Institute, which remember is going to be February 5 through 8 in Anaheim, California, we are going to try to put together an agenda so that makes it possible for all of you who are participating in various special initiatives inside the Achieving the Dream umbrella to get together and do some reflection and sharing of progress and so forth. So just please be aware that when we announce the winners of the Achieving the Dream Catalyst Fund, which will be happening later this month, those several colleges will be asked to sit together at a special time during the DREAM Institute so that we can talk about the work going on in that effort. Similarly, we've made a commitment to reconvene all of the 15 colleges that were in the Developmental Education Initiative, and we've committed to convening the 15 or so colleges that are in the Financial Empowerment Project. We are going to make space for the 7 colleges that are in the Texas Peer Coaching Initiative to get together. And we're also going to be finding space for the 15 colleges that are part of the Walmart Press for Completion. That means some of you are going to be going to several different special meetings. So we know we've got a scheduling challenge, but we think it's important that you have the opportunity to get together in clusters so that you can better compare notes about how things are working in these separate initiatives that you're participating in. It's important to know that this is going to happen because it could impact your decisions about who you want to send to DREAM. And we wanted to get this out to you, this alert out to you early enough that you would be able to make those kinds of accommodations when you send in the registrations for the DREAM event. One other business item, we call your attention today to a new report that we've posted on our website. It's been released by Public Agenda and West Ed, and it's the second in a series of reports that they've done where they are reports they've had with students who are still in college and others who have left college in the states of Florida, North Carolina, Ohio, and Texas. And what they've been doing is interviewing these students about their early college experience. What they're finding from their focus groups is that students are consistently saying that they want to be more connected to their colleges, their faculty, the staff, and their fellow students. They are struggling with getting that connection. They need more help making that connection. And they need the colleges to be taking more deliberate strategies to connect students with faculty and other peers. They also talk about their experience in developmental education, what some of the disappointments were there, what some of the surprises were, for example, not even knowing that they were going to have to take developmental education, and just in general, the kinds of supports that they felt they really needed in their early connection to college. So we urge you to take a look at that report and think about it and share it with others on your staff who care about and are responsible for the early phases of a student's engagement in your institution. So with that, Sarah would like to do a poll. And what we would like to do, if we would like to ask you about your experience with this topic that we're discussing today. We are going to be talking about placement exams and the role that the placement exams are playing in really getting students off to a positive start or to perhaps a rocky start when they get into college. So to set this up, what we'd like to do is to have you respond to the poll that's on your screen right now and just tell us, so our presenters have the benefit of knowing, whether or not you use placement tests alone when you are placing students into developmental education, whether you have additional measures that you use with the placement test, whether you use high school grades when you're thinking about this, whether your institution considers academic goals, and also you've got a choice if there's none of the above or you don't really know what your institution is doing. Give us some quick feedback, please, on the main way you determine whether or not students need to be placed in developmental education when they come to your college. So Sarah's going to give you a few seconds to respond.
We have about 90% have voted, so get your votes in. A few more seconds, and then we'll go ahead and share the results. I think almost everyone has voted. Great. So let's go ahead and share and see what we've learned here.
Okay. This is part of what I think Gretchen and Pam want to talk about today. The majority of you, and this I think is consistent across the country, are using a placement test alone. Some of you are experimenting with some other measures as well. Very few of you are using high school grades, and yet I think you'll hear today about the predictive value of and when you're making placements. So this is great. This sets us up for understanding that the field is primarily using a single placement test, and the research is suggesting that perhaps that's not good enough anymore. So with that, let me go back to reminding our experts. Gretchen Smith is a very, very familiar face and name to many of you because she used to be in the state of Virginia working on their reform efforts prior to jumping over to Jobs for the Future, where she's now a program director and working on state policy issues across the country. We also have Pam Bergman, who's another familiar face to many of us. Pam has been in this field for a long, long time. She was with a foundation in California when I first met her, and she was already working on student success issues then and has considered to be a scholar and a researcher in this area. So we're really pleased to have both of them with us today. Pam has recently released a report that she's going to talk about that is focusing on the issue of placement exams and what they can and can't do well for us when we're trying to get students off to a good start in college. So with that, why don't I turn the mic over to Gretchen and let her get us deep into this content today. Gretchen?
Thanks, Carol. Thanks, Carol, and thank you, everyone, for having me. I am going to not steal any of Pam's thunder of the detail of the report, but I'd like to provide you a bit of context about the report and the impetus for writing the report, and then Pam can talk to you in more detail about the content, and then I'm happy to answer any questions as we move forward. JFS is the state policy partner and the managing partner for the Achieving the Dream Developmental Education Initiative and Completion by Design initiatives. And last year we started a new meeting format that came from requests from our state leads. We have a semi-annual meeting that is a larger meeting that is a two-day meeting, and the content is based on the issues that states are struggling with around reform in student success. We heard from our state policy leads that that was great, but the 1 hour or even 2 hour sessions were not enough time for them to really chew on a topic with their peers and to engage and have conversation about best practices and what's working and what's not working, and to be able to bounce ideas off of national experts and have a fairly deep dialogue about these issues that they're all wrestling with. And as a result, we developed this new format that we call our cross-state topics meetings. We had 3 of them last year, one on faculty engagement, one on financial aid, and the third one was on assessment. These are topics, we polled our states. These were topics that were raised as areas that they wanted more information about and that they wanted to talk about more deeply. We released briefs on the faculty engagement and financial aid meetings. They're available on our website. But the assessment topic came at the heels of all of the CCRC research on multiple measures and examining placement as a multiple measure process, and we knew that there was going to be a lot of interest in the results of the meeting, in the dialogue, and the conversation. So we asked Pam, who we partner with and have partnered with on many papers in the past, we asked Pam to attend that meeting and to write a paper based on the meeting, the content of the meeting, and also the national dialogue about assessment. And so last 2 months ago now, I think Pam will be able to correct me, we released Pam's paper called Where to Begin. It received a lot of press. It was in the Chronicle, it was in EdWeek, it was in a whole host of different publications. And Pam has been interviewed in multiple times and been asked a host of times to be on panels and in webinars talking about the paper. So it's gotten a lot of legs. And so in that, and we at JFS have also been presenting on it in talking about assessment in the context of our student success efforts. And so with that introduction, I'd like to turn it over to Pam and have her talk about the content of the paper and give you some background on what she looked at when she was writing it.
Great. Okay, and let's stay on the title page for another minute. This is Pam. Hi, everyone. So how we question about placement exams, I just wanted to go back for a second and say why that is. And it's in many cases because colleges and college systems around the country are looking at improving developmental education and or improving the preparation of the students who come to them from K-12. And in both of those efforts, they ultimately start to ask and to look at how they're determining whether students are college ready in the first place. And in doing so, more and more college leaders are looking at recent research, and it's starting to shake up their perspectives. And that's basically the subject of the recent report. So now we can go to the next slide. Okay, can we go to the next slide? There we go. So what I found in looking at the research is that where you look determines what you see. So there's this optical illusion here. But when you're thinking about college readiness, you have to ask, are we looking at underprepared students, or are we looking at inadequate measures of students' preparedness? And increasingly, the answer to that question is becoming less clear as we look at the research and start to wonder how do we measure college readiness. So what I found is there's basically a new narrative that's emerging from the research. Decisions about placement are moving to the foreground, leading states and systems to ask new questions and pursue new strategies. And when I say placement is, and hold off on the bullets for now, when I say placement is moving to the foreground, I don't mean that things like curriculum and instruction are moving to the background, but in effect, these things all have to go together. So I'm going to briefly highlight what the new narrative is and then share a few of the strategies that states are looking at. And there are many more in the report. I'm just giving a sort of a high-level summary of that. So starting with the bullet points, the research coming out, there's some recent research, but there's really been a lot of reports over the last few years that are changing our perspective on how we think about placement exams in developmental ed. First of all, these exams, we've often considered them to be sort of low-stakes tests. They're not admissions tests. You know, the student, it's not going to affect where they go to college. But more and more we're realizing these exams are high-stakes tests, particularly because of the sometimes long trajectories students are placed into that serve as obstacles to getting through college. So it's more and more clear that these are high-stakes tests. Secondly, on the next bullet, the research has been pretty equivocal about whether developmental education really works, really helps students get to degrees and certificates. Some studies say yes, some studies say no, and they're all sort of around the margin. And as Tom Bailey at CCRC wrote, concluding that developmental students do as well as similar students who go directly into college courses is not good enough and suggests that remediation wastes money and time, and that's why many of us are looking at how to improve it. a third and a related point, one of the things people are looking at is acceleration, and some acceleration strategies look quite promising. The research is fairly new. It's not definitive yet, but there are approaches such as mainstreaming with support that's used at, in Baltimore, and students who are below the cut score for college-level courses are placed into the college level and given additional support, and the initial research suggests that those students are doing well. Other ways of compressing curriculum, some of you here may be doing it. Then the fourth point here, and this one Gretchen alluded to, as did Carol, and this has gotten a lot of attention, but I'm suggesting it's part of this bigger package. The placement exams really are not very strong predictors of how students are going to do in college. In the case of English, the score explains only about 2% of the variance in students' performance. And when people look at that number, they start to ask, why are we using these tests in that case? This has given a lot of people pause. And the fact that Carol also alluded to, high school grades are more predictive. This has been true for a while in terms of admissions tests, but there's only been rigorous research on this more recently for placement exams. And the last point is also important, which is as states are thinking more and more about college readiness, it begs for definition. And the definitions of college readiness that are coming out include a wide range of skills and behaviors, not just the English and math skills that are assessed by these tests. So when taken together, these 5 elements to wonder, well, how do we measure whether students are ready? How much stock do we put in these tests? And how do we best serve these students? And it's kind of somewhat up for grabs. A lot of different approaches are being tried. And there's 3 main categories of strategies, which we'll start on the next slide. The first one, and the first bullet on this slide, please. The first thing is states and colleges are looking at ways to de-emphasize these exams, maybe continue using them but not make 100% of their decision based on the test scores. The Connecticut legislation that is looking to decrease the reliance on remedial education mandated that determining readiness, colleges will need to use multiple measures. North Carolina is considering doing something like this, and high school grades are the most prominent measure that's being considered. There are many variations of how to do it. Secondly, there are examples. Long Beach City College, I'm sorry, I'm still on the first bullet. Long Beach City College did a study, and some other colleges in California are trying to replicate it. They found if they used high school grade alone and waived testing, that they could increase the number of students eligible for college-level English by 500%. And their analysis suggests that those students could pass the class. So that research is still going, but that suggests waiving testing for students whose high school grades are strong enough, not just if they pass the placement, had a high SAT score or something like that. So downplaying the test is one thing. Secondly, and that's the second bullet, designing new tests. Because when we're asking why are these tests why is the predictive value so low? One reason is maybe the tests just aren't very good and maybe we can make them better. At least 4 states and are already in the process of developing and using new assessments. And some of you I'm sure some of you are represented on this call, Florida, Virginia, North Carolina, and Texas. The 2 main features that are being pursued, one is customized to the curriculum. The faculty are working to determine what the outcomes are that are required for college level, and they're designing their tests around their own curriculum in the state. Secondly, they're looking for diagnostic assessment. North Carolina and Virginia are 2 examples in which they're using modularized curriculum, and the assessment will diagnose more specifically which modules the students require, as well as which are even required for their educational goal, their major. So the new tests is another thing. And third, which is the last bullet, supporting students around these tests. Another reason students may not, why the tests may not be very predictive is they may not reflect students' actual abilities because the students weren't ready to take the test or they were rushing through the test, something like that. So there are a few approaches, both in high school and in college, for helping students prepare. There are early assessment approaches in 11th grade, such as Florida and California are doing, to help students brush up while they're still in their senior year of high school. And then there are approaches that colleges are using to help students after they arrive. Santa Monica uses a sort of test orientation website called Prep to Test, and they're saying that students who do prepare for the test are 18% more likely to get into college-level English and 36% more likely to place into college-level math. New Jersey College, Cumberland County College, has tried a 6-hour refresher course for students who do not pass the placement exam, and they're reporting that more than 85% of students who took the refresher subsequently passed college-level English, and that cost students $35. I asked about students who took developmental education, and I was told that those in the highest level of developmental ed, 71% of them subsequently passed college-level English, and that's a $330 course. So I think these kinds of strategies are certainly worth looking at. And lastly, on the next slide, I think what I saw in working on this is that there's a lot of room for innovation. There's things that people are trying, there's things that have not yet been tried, and we're going to have to learn from all these efforts. And there are a lot of tensions and trade-offs. It's very easy to say, well, the research says this, but what in practice do you do? You could have an 8-hour-long test, and it would probably give you a very nuanced picture of students' abilities, but it's completely unrealistic to pay for an 8-hour test and to ask students to sit that long. So there are a lot of trade-offs that in practice all of you are going to have to think about and decide, and I think that's why this call will hopefully help you in that process. And I look forward to discussing the issues more with you. And that's my last slide, I think.
Thank you very, very much, Pam, and thank you, Gretchen, for your role at JFF and securing Pam's help and putting this wonderful report together for us. Really appreciate it. We've got Sharon Jefferson, who's Vice President of Student Affairs at Tallahatchie Community College, on the webinar. And I'd like to just throw it to her first and ask if you wanted to make a comment or two about what's going on in Florida regarding the implementation of the state placement exam policy that was referenced when Pam was talking about some of the things happening in Florida. Sharon, are you with us? Could you kick us off the discussion part, please?
I think it was Sharon, right?
Yes, Sharon. Mm-hmm.
Am I?
There you go, Sharon.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. Florida, in the last year and a half or so, has adopted a new placement test. And right now, I think well, I know for a fact, the vote is kind of out as to whether it's any better at assessing or evaluating students appropriately and helping us to get them placed. Like everyone else, we have some concern as to whether this test is really doing what we would like for it to do, and that's help us put students in the correct courses in the beginning. But at this college, one of the things we've done is to look at the test scores as well as the students' educational background and see if we can accelerate them through the developmental ed process. We're mandated by state law to test students and to place them appropriately. We have done here at the college is had put together a program where we would allow students to get through, that are in the lowest level, to get through 2 courses in the same semester.
because we can have up to 3 courses before a student will get a college credit in math, and that is very, very frustrating to students. So we've decided let's try to accelerate the process for them. And so we're currently working really on a project to see if we can help them and certainly help them be successful at each level. Because students get discouraged, they stop out, they don't want to take 3 classes of math, elementary algebra, intermediate algebra before they finally get a college math credit for their degree. Any questions?
Thank you, Sharon. I think what we're going to do is we're going to open it up to the audience for questions to any of our presenters today, Gretchen or Pam or you, Sharon, and Sarah's going to facilitate that. Maybe you need to remind us how we ask questions, Sarah.
Sure. So there are 2 options for asking questions. You can type your question into the question pane, and I'll go ahead and read it to the presenters, and they can then have an opportunity to respond. Or you can raise your hand, and I will unmute you, and you can go ahead and ask your question that way. I do have one question that I think is a great place to start. Mary Kate Quinlan asked, is someone developing a commercially available placement test that aligns with the Common Core standard? And this is very relevant since we did do a webinar as well on the Common Core standard with Achieve. So I don't know whether Gretchen or Pam or Sharon would like to take that question.
You know, someone can add to this if they know more than what I'm aware of. I will say Florida, for example, when they were developing PERT and their post-secondary competencies, did go through a process of aligning it with the Common Core. Now, the PERT is not commercially available, however, to answer that other question. I do know a lot of states are looking at this. I'd be rather confident that someone would develop a commercially available test, but I can't give you any specifics on that because I don't know details. Does anybody else?
This is Gretchen. I think that the expectation in conversations that I've been involved in, and we had folks from Achieve and Smarter Balance for the PARC and the Smarter Balance assessments at this assessment meeting. In states where there's a very strong commitment around the Common Core, that there has been a conversation between higher education and the K-12 sector about college and career readiness standards and what they are and what they mean for academic preparation for students moving into post-secondary. And there have been preliminary agreements signed between the K-12 sector and the higher education folks saying that when the PARC and Smarter Balance tests are implemented, that the cut score meets the college and career ready threshold on the content side, that the cut score for that will be used in lieu of a placement test score for students entering post-secondary. So it wouldn't be a new test. It will be using the PARC and Smarter Balance assessments as vehicles for placement based on mutually agreed upon cut score.
So yes, and I just want to add that in those cases, the assessment would be used to waive testing for students who are considered ready, and the students who are considered not ready in most of these cases would, I think, still need to take some sort of placement test. So it kind of gets you part of the way there.
Great. Anybody else have anything to add on that before I move on to the next question? Okay, I'd like to go ahead and call on, I'm going to butcher the name, I'm sorry in advance, Sean Zhang, who's had his hand raised. for a while, so I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Don't know if you'll be able to. Looks like you don't have your audio pin, and so I'm going to need you to send in your question via the question pane, or go ahead and put that audio pin in and raise your hand again. Okay, I think that Maria from Houston, I think you had a question. I'm going to go ahead and unmute your line. And also, Maria, you need to make sure that you put your audio pin in order to ask your question via the phone connection. So I think that we might have your question here, though. So given a placement test using multiple measures and a control group who have been mainstream, so students who have been given a placement test using multiple groups who have been mainstream. I'm not quite sure what I understand by mainstream, but maybe our presenters could talk about any studies of students who have been given a placement test using multiple measures with perhaps a control group involved.
It sounds to me like she's saying if they've been given a placement test and then use multiple measures, and then the control group, I'm not clear on what the control group would be. So I'm not thinking of, I don't know of, let me just say this, I don't know of any randomized control studies that have been done on this topic, so probably not. At least I can't think of any involving two different kinds of testing strategies for two different groups. So if we get more information on the question, I might be able to give a better answer.
Mm-hmm. So Maria, if you want to send in some more clarification on that, maybe we can address it again. I want to address this other question from Andrew Barnett at Westmoreland. He said, placement test publishers say that their tests aren't designed to be predictive, and that, in fact, they are only designed to assess ability. How do you answer that assertion?
I think there's a discussion about this issue because when you look at predictive validity, then someone can say, well, the test wasn't supposed to predict. The test is supposed to just assess students' ability on that given day or whatever. And there's some truth to that. I think the problem is that college leaders, and there's a quote on this in my report, in fact, are looking for what tools they can use to better serve their students. And what they're looking at is helping students do better in the future. So they're sort of trying to figure out how to improve upon what we already, what they already have. And that's why there's more attempts, because the test makers will also say the tests should not be used as the sole factor in determining how students are placed. All test producers will tell you that, and yet that is what's commonly done. So I think the idea of using more than one measure, certainly all the test experts would say that is the right thing to do. But let me just add, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
And they're not. They say this is because there are other reasons students don't succeed in the class. It may not be because they didn't know the material. It may be because they didn't go to class, they got bored, they had a bad teacher. So the tests can't be held responsible for all of these other things, and that's certainly a fair point.
One of our questions is about using high school grades for placement purposes. Can you say a little bit about any colleges that are using these high school grades for placement purposes and how they're controlling for variations in high school curricula? I
don't know how basically The research for years and years, this is true of admittance tests, which have been studied for a long time. All the research always shows that high school grades are more predictive than tests are. However, people always have this question of, you know, different teachers' grading practices, different schools, rigor, and everything. And yet, despite that, high school grades do a better job. I don't know of specific practices. I have not heard of any practices of colleges taking into account differences in high schools, but I do know of an interesting example also mentioned in my report where a college worked with their local high school to align their curriculum, and they knew exactly what was in the high school curriculum and determined that students who could succeed and pass that curriculum were eligible to take their college level class, no matter how they did on the placement exams. They ended up having something like 85% of the students did not pass the placement exam, and yet were able to succeed in the college level course. So there certainly are ways that colleges can work with high schools around their curriculum and aligning it, but I haven't seen it done specifically with grades, as the question was asked.
This is Gretchen. I know that the state of Washington was going through a process to have colleges examine the high school transcripts in their local area and make determinations about the course-taking patterns and the grades that would demonstrate college readiness. And it would therefore waive the placement test process for students in their region. And then the groups were meeting across the state to develop reciprocity agreements. So not every college would have to evaluate every high school transcript in every region, but that the colleges would be responsible for only evaluating their high schools in their regions, and there would be a statewide agreement for those colleges to take each other's determination. I also know that North Carolina is examining the change in their system level policy to allow for high school grades to be used as part of the placement process, and because that is not part of their statewide process now, and that the colleges in completion by design are examining how to do that and will be used as a model for other colleges in the state after they have piloted that process.
Great, thank you for that. So we do have a few more questions here, but unfortunately we're out of time. What I will do is I will take these questions and send them along to our presenters and see if we might be able to get some answers out to the participants with the follow-up email. But with that, I'd like to turn it over to Carol to close off the webinar and tell us what we have in store next time.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. And thank you so much, Gretchen and Pam. I think this topic could have gone on for a long time, especially since we know we've got questions in the queue still that didn't get answered. So thank you so much for putting this on the table for everybody's consideration. Next month, our conference call or our webinar is going to be scheduled for Thursday, November 1st. The topic is workforce development and the role of community colleges, looking at what's happening now with the colleges that are participating in the TAC program. There's 54 Achieving Dream colleges that received grants in round 1 and 45 in round 2. So some of them have gotten grants from both rounds. So we're starting to get a considerable center of gravity in this issue, and we want to focus on this next time. We hope you will all join us. Sarah, I don't know if you wanted to do the final evaluation poll.
If you'd like to.
If you all would just stick around long enough to do that for us, we would appreciate it. So go ahead, if you will, and respond to this poll.
Got about 60% that have voted. We're almost there. And I think we've got most of our votes in. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll so we can show the results. And you can see that this was a very useful and informative call, and we agree, and we'll try to get you some more information about this. And I'm glad that the webinar format was useful, and it seems like we might need a little bit more time for questions in the future on a topic of this substance.
Very good. So we will take that into consideration and figure out how to stick to more time for questions and discussions on these calls and still stay within our short 45-minute time period. Thanks to all, and we'll talk to you again on November 1st.
Thank you, everyone.